The year is 1894, a time when the world was still largely unexplored and vast expanses of land remained untouched by human hands. The place is the Montana wilderness, a region so remote and wild that it feels like stepping back in time. Imagine towering peaks that pierce the sky, their snow-capped summits glistening in the sunlight, standing as silent sentinels over the land. Jagged rocks and dense forests cover the land, creating a rugged and challenging terrain that tests the mettle of anyone who dares to traverse it. This is a place of raw, untamed beauty, a landscape that has remained unchanged for millennia, offering a glimpse into a world before the advent of modern civilization. The air is crisp and clean, carrying the scent of pine and earth. In the early morning, a mist often blankets the forest, adding an ethereal quality to the scene. The silence is broken only by the sound of the wind rustling through the trees and the rushing water of the rivers which carve their way through the landscape with relentless force. This is a land where nature reigns supreme. The wilderness is unforgiving, a place where the rules of survival are dictated by the natural world. It is a place of danger and beauty where only the strong survive. Predators roam the forests and the elements can be as harsh as they are breathtaking. But for those who dare to venture into its depths, it offers a chance to experience the world as it was meant to be, wild and free. Explorers and adventurers are drawn to this untamed land, seeking the thrill of discovery and the challenge of surviving in one of the last true wildernesses on Earth. Nights in the Montana wilderness are a spectacle of their own. As the sun sets, the sky transforms into a canvas of stars, unpolluted by city lights. Around a campfire, stories of the day's adventures are shared, and the crackling flames provide warmth against the cool night air. Wildlife is abundant here. Deer graze in the meadows and eagles soar high above, their keen eyes scanning the ground for prey. Each creature plays a role in the delicate balance of this ecosystem. For the explorers, mapping the terrain and setting up camp is a daily ritual. Every day brings new challenges and discoveries as they navigate through the dense forests and across the rocky terrain. As dawn breaks, the first light of day reveals a landscape covered in morning dew, the mountains bathed in a golden glow. It's a reminder of the beauty and majesty of the natural world and the endless possibilities that lie within the untamed wilderness. John Caldwell was a man of the frontier. He was a figure who embodied the spirit of the untamed wilderness, a man who thrived where others would falter. He was born and raised in the wild, his cradle the dense forests and his playground the vast open plains. From a young age, John learned to navigate the rugged terrain, his senses finely tuned to the rhythms of nature. He knew its secrets and its dangers, understanding the delicate balance between life and death in the wilderness. The forest was his teacher, and he was an eager student, absorbing every lesson it had to offer. John was a trapper and a hunter, skills passed down through generations. He knew how to set traps with precision and how to track his prey with an almost uncanny ability. His rifle was an extension of himself, a tool he wielded with expertise. He lived off the land, relying on his skills and his wits to survive. Every meal was hard-earned, every fire a testament to his resourcefulness. He could catch a fish with his bare hands and cook it over a campfire, savoring the fruits of his labor. He was a man of few words, but his eyes held the wisdom of someone who had seen much. They reflected the countless sunsets he had watched, the storms he had weathered, and the solitude he had embraced. John was tough and resourceful, able to fix a broken tool with whatever materials were at hand, and build a shelter that could withstand the harshest elements. His hands were calloused, his muscles honed by years of hard labor. He was a skilled tracker and marksman, able to follow the faintest of trails and hit a target at great distances. His eyes could pick out the smallest details, and his patience was unmatched. He knew how to read the signs of the wilderness, interpreting broken twigs and animal tracks, like a language only he could understand. Each mark told a story, and John was a master storyteller. He could find his way through the densest forests and over the highest mountains, his sense of direction almost instinctual. No terrain was too challenging, no obstacle too great for him to overcome. He was a true frontiersman, a symbol of resilience and independence. John Caldwell was not just a man of the frontier, he was the frontier itself, a living embodiment of its spirit and strength. One crisp autumn morning, John set out into the wilderness. He was in search of food and furs. His journey led him deep into a remote valley. The valley was teeming with life. A herd of elk grazed peacefully in the meadow. It was a sight to behold. John's heart quickened with anticipation. He had never seen so many elk in one place before. This was a hunter's dream. But little did he know that danger lurked nearby. As John crept closer to the herd, he noticed something out of the corner of his eye. The forest was eerily silent, the only sound being the crunch of leaves under his boots. He had been tracking the elk for hours, his senses heightened, every muscle in his body tense with anticipation. The thrill of the hunt coursed through his veins, but now something felt off. A massive grizzly bear emerged from the trees. It moved with a grace that belied its size, each step deliberate and powerful. The air seemed to thicken with the presence of the beast, and John could feel his heart pounding in his chest. It was the largest bear John had ever seen. Its sheer size was intimidating, a living mountain of muscle and fur. He had heard tales of such creatures, but seeing one in person was a different experience altogether. The bear's eyes were dark and intelligent, scanning the forest with a predatory gaze. Its fur was a dark chocolate brown, and its claws were like daggers. Each claw was as long as John's hand, and they glinted menacingly in the dappled sunlight filtering through the trees. The bear's fur rippled with each movement, a testament to its raw power. The bear stood on its hind legs, sniffing the air. It towered above the underbrush, its massive form casting a long shadow. John could see the muscles in its legs and torso flexing as it balanced, its nose twitching as it caught the scent of the elk. Its eyes were fixed on the elk. Fear gripped John's heart. He knew that the bear was a master hunter, and the elk stood little chance against such a formidable predator. The realization that he was now in the presence of two apex predators sent a chill down his spine. He knew that a grizzly bear was a formidable enemy. Its roar echoed through the forest, a sound that seemed to vibrate in John's very bones. The bear's teeth were bared, sharp and deadly, and its claws were ready to strike. John felt a surge of adrenaline, his instinct screaming at him to run. It could tear a man limb from limb with ease. The stories he had heard of bear attacks flashed through his mind, each one more gruesome than the last. He could almost feel the bear's claws rending his flesh, its teeth sinking into his bones. The thought was enough to spur him into action. John had to get away. He turned and ran, his feet pounding the forest floor. Branches whipped at his face and the underbrush clawed at his legs, but he didn't stop. He could hear the bear behind him, its heavy footsteps a constant reminder of the danger he was in. He had to warn the other hunters. They needed to know about the bear, to be prepared for the threat it posed. As he burst into the clearing where his fellow hunters were gathered, he shouted a warning, his voice hoarse with fear and exertion. The shadow of death was upon them, and they had to be ready. Section 5. Flight for Life. John turned and ran as fast as he could. He could hear the bear crashing through the undergrowth behind him. Its heavy breathing seemed to echo through the forest. John's heart pounded in his chest. He had to find a place to hide. The bear was gaining on him. John could feel its hot breath on his neck. He knew that if he didn't find shelter soon, he would be the bear's next meal. Section 6. Trapped beneath the sky. John spotted a towering pine tree. It was his only hope. He scrambled up the rough bark, his hands bleeding from the effort. He climbed higher and higher until he was well out of the bear's reach. The bear paced at the base of the tree, its eyes fixed on John. It swiped at the trunk with its massive paws, leaving deep gouges in the bark. John knew that he was trapped. Section 7. A Dance with Death. For hours the bear circled the tree. It would stand on its hind legs and try to reach John. It would claw at the trunk and bite at the branches, but John held on for dear life. He knew that if he fell, he would be killed instantly. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the forest floor. The air grew colder. John's arms ached from holding onto the tree. He was exhausted, but he couldn't give up. Section 8. The Decisive Shot. Just when John thought he could hold on no longer, he remembered his rifle. He had left it leaning against the base of the tree. Carefully, he lowered himself down until he could reach it. With trembling hands, he raised the rifle and took aim. John fired a single shot. The sound of the gunshot echoed through the forest. The bear roared in pain and stumbled backward. It lay still on the ground. Section 9. A Moment of Reflection. John climbed down from the tree and cautiously approached the bear. It was dead. John had cheated death once again. He stood over the bear's massive body, his heart pounding in his chest. He had never been so close to death before. John took a deep breath and looked around at the wilderness that surrounded him. He realized that he was just a visitor in this wild and unforgiving land. He had been lucky this time, but he knew that he would never forget his encounter with the grizzly bear. Section 10. The Wild Remains. John Caldwell's story is a reminder of the power and the danger of the natural world. It is a reminder that we are not the masters of this planet. We are merely guests, and we should treat it with respect. The wilderness is still out there waiting to be explored, but it is not for the faint of heart. The wild remains, and so do the stories of those who dare to venture into its embrace.